Well, we'll get started. Stair Builders and Manufacturers Association, I got to minimize this so I can read it, has adopted antitrust compliance guidelines for all SMA meetings. This adopted guideline is for protection of the members and the SMA, so no violations of antitrust laws are accused. There can be no discussion or agreements among competitors which would restrain or attempt to restrain competition in the open markets. Specific topics not discussed at SMA meetings or functions include, among other things, current or future prices, stabilization of markets, and reasonable profit levels. Agree with your name, please.
Agree.
David. Agree.
Bob,
Cool. Bob, you're here.
I'm here.
Oh boy. So Tara sent out a poll with 4, 5, or 6 plates that have been created for the new class editions so far, and I've not heard back from some of you folks. So I'm wondering if you've had a chance to look at it. If you have, can we discuss it, or do you guys want another couple of days to look at it? This was the first page that was altered.
Yeah, I haven't had time to look at it yet, but
I'll let you in for a secret. These 3 drawings right here, one of them's wrong for the 2012 code. That's what this is for. Really, all I did on this page was I had the writers, what are you going to call them, add in this picture right here.
We're not seeing a picture, though.
This drawing, you're not seeing the, oh, I didn't share the stupid, I got to share the PowerPoint. There it is. How about now?
That's better.
that's better.
Okay, so one of these 3 drawings is incorrect for 2012.
I'm guessing the one on the right.
Yeah, buddy. You know why, right?
Well, I've heard different variations, but
Uh-oh.
because the null's not all the way down on the first tread.
It doesn't have to be all the way down on the first tread. You got 30 inches over here you can play with. There's no wall rail. You still have to go from bottom of the riser to the top of the riser in a flight with a rail. Being that this is within the 30 inches, this is okay. It just needs a wall rail on this side. Right, Rusty?
If it was on the first trade, you wouldn't need a wall rail. It could go both ways. That's your trick question.
Right.
Yep. Very good, David. You know your codes. The next one, this is an additional slide. These slides are not in any order, by the way. This is an additional slide that goes in ahead of Bob's papers for over the post, and it also talks about wall rail in regards to the location of the rail bolts for not cramming into pin top balusters. So if you guys get a chance to go over this and read it, it's a couple of whatevers, and there's some more pictures for you to look at just so you don't get lonely. And then this plate was just a combine of what Brad did. We changed the names back to a generic name, so that none of this has really changed as far as the how it works. This was added in with the treads, so please take a look at this for the different newel mounts for surface mounting newels. If you know of a 3rd or 4th or 5th, wherever combination we're on, please let me know, and let's see if we can get it in. Andy, this is what we went over for you the other day. This was your section, but in your section here, I have not gotten to the caps. The caps are going to come up in the, if you agree, of course, they're going to come up in the over the post section where the rail hits the caps. So we can explain the post heights and what have you. And something changed here, and I wish I could remember what. I don't know. I don't remember. Other than the differences between these pictures and the reasoning why. Then this picture changed. This drawing changed. Also, the formulas were a little bit more simplified. What had happened, and I noticed it in the class we did at Andy's, this small letter A right here was also used on the intermediate landing and the landing newel, and the two A's in the showing up in the formula were exactly the same, and they were confusing. So the second drawing is right here. There's the first drawing. There's a second drawing where we work with the landing newels. So we changed the A to a C. And in some instances, depending upon where the newel is mounted, if the newel is forward of the nosing, the C is going to be a minus number in the formula. If it's behind the nosing, it's a plus number in the formula for your rail heights. So that was a major change there. This particular plate is coming out this week. And then the baluster plate stayed the same. Nothing changed on it. So these are the two additional plates. You've got this one. If you like, I'll send you this one so you can have both of them together. Go through the formula and see what you think. And I am open for suggestions of if you guys have a different way for calculating the length of the newel once it's located, other than just pulling a ruler out, scratching your head, and just doing the numbers in your head. I can't teach the kids how to do that. Got to show them something. Any comments, any suggestions, anythings?
There's a simplified way that we've used quite often is if you take your picture of your rail, and what often is very convenient is to find plumb off your nose what your height is, but then work parallel from the nose to the top of the rail. Then if you take and you rip a scrap of plywood to that width that represents the top of the rail, you can bring that right up and around the stair, and you put a plumb line on it, and you can slide that back and forth to where your newel orientation is and measure. And it's a simple way to not have to do any math, basic math. It's a lot harder to make mistakes that way.
When you do your rails, you do them down on the stair, or you do them up in the air?
Well, we cut everything on the CNC. We will bring them down on the stair, and then we work on what the height is going up. So we can take it, you know, if we put it down on the stair and you know that you're going straight up in the air X amount of inches, then it's easy enough to calculate your newel heights that way. You know, it's just a matter of how we do it. Everybody's different, so.
Well, that's
So
what
like putting wall rail brackets, for instance, you know, when you go to put a wall rail bracket on,
yeah.
If you lay off the nose of the tread and you figure out where your bracket is, it's easier and more accurate to get it consistent to measure perpendicular from the pitch line of the nose of the treads.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's one of those things that what I often thought of doing was making up basically a parallelogram.
Right.
That you could just finally adjust, tighten it up, because it's easier to come around and mark everything once you're working off the pitch of the treads, and you know what the height is, the offset is. It's easier to get it accurate than it is necessarily measuring plumb.
Yeah, this is basically exactly what we're doing here, because we use the pitch block because all the manufacturers use a pitch block. So that's what this page is based on. So basically, once the layout is determined, this is where the first baluster is. And if you notice, the newel is drawn slightly behind it because of the turn radius, the small turn diameter of the newel and the small turn diameter baluster. You got to do the sphere calculation. Yep. So once that's determined, then you know exactly where the back of the newel is. on the pitch block, we mark this up or measure this up right here to the bottom of the rail. We already know the rail's going up to 34 inches in this particular exercise. So 34 inches plus this cut right here, the B cut, plus the A cut, small A cut, plus whatever the reveal is at the top of a square block newel is the height of the newel. So that's basically the same thing we're doing without using a sheet of plywood. I've seen the sheet of plywood done. I worked with a guy that did that. And he would spend a half an hour running around a job looking for a piece of plywood. So, but I understand what you're saying. I like the concept. The only drawback, and I still sit funny because of that, because my grandfather kicked my butt 100 years ago, was that we did an old house and the stair had a sag in it. And I mimicked that sag in the wall handrail. And he went up one side of me and down the other because I didn't pull a spring on that stair. So that's the other side of the plywood. So, but it's a very good scenario. It works out very well. I've actually done that in the shop and laid out all the newels and stuff in the shop just to make sure that everything was correct and done it the same way. Is there another way? Andy, you got another way? I'm sorry, and Andy's not here. David, you got another way?
Well, the way we normally was doing it was just plumbing up and adding the number, doing the rail on the stair, then adding the number to the height, like you have there, the 1.5 inches to the raised height, just add two numbers together, and that's, your heights.
Yeah, so you and Bob are both on the same page on this one. It's just doing a piece of plywood.
The only reason I mentioned the plywood, we work out of CAD, so everything is done and we got numbers. But sometimes it's easier I found when you're teaching somebody, it's easier for them to envision that. And the other thing is if you do the plywood, once you get your newels in, you can go and mark the top of your rails so that, for a confidence builder, they understand that, before they get too far, that they have the newels in place correctly. They understand the offsets of the rail. I'm thinking in terms of, people that aren't highly skilled, which is, I guess, basically who we're teaching, right?
Right. This is apprentices.
Yeah. Right. So, I've had, over the years, I've had some people that have worked for me that you give them formulas and they go, but if you give them a simplified way to lay stuff out, like using the pitch block and that stuff, they could manage that pretty well. Like I tell people with stairs, they really are very simple. When you break them down, you have level, horizontal, vertical, plumb, and pitch. And if you can understand the relationship of those three things and how they work, stairs aren't difficult. And, if you can get their mindset around that, then it works pretty good.
When we show the class, we take the pitch block and they lay the pitch block out where the balusters go, and I show them how we talk about calculating the length. And I grab the pitch block and hold my ruler at the 34 rake and measure the difference and add the inch, and they all smile and laugh and go, "Oh my God, that's so easy." So we use different things to get, you never know what's going to click with somebody. We had one guy sit there at Carolina's class, and in 5 minutes he's walking around smiling. I go, "What, you got it?" He goes, "Yeah, I got it. I can do the math. I got it." And that was it. Well, the other guys were still banging their heads against the walls trying to figure it out. So different things click with different people. That's why we try to show so many different ways.
Yeah.
To make sure that they all get to the same page at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's where I was telling you on the one, I had a tape measure that I cut off at 31 inches and went up and just used that for measuring, and then there was no adding up.
Yeah.
Start with the stair on the rail, on the stair, and then you just measure it, and it is what it is.
That's a cool idea. I never thought of that one.
There's another trick that I have showed more carpenters on job sites over the years my math teacher taught me, who did building on the side, is to add and subtract with your tape measure. You guys
Right.
know how to do that? You know,
Yeah.
to fold your
Yeah.
tape over, because like I told him, it's like, you know, you're never adding whole numbers. You're always adding something in a 32nd, or, you know, something in 11/16. And we all end up with that inchitis business. And adding, subtracting with the tape makes it blatantly simple and very difficult to make a mistake. So.
Yeah, did you ever show them how to use the tape like that, fold it over and use the year you were born to tell you how old you are?
No.
That blows them away. I like this with the ruler. So you literally take a folding ruler and just cut the thing up, or?
Well, it was actually just
Yardstick.
like an old Stanley metal tape that
Yeah.
the end got broke off of.
Okay.
I'll pull it out to, you know, 48, 50 inches long, cut it off, and then cut it for for a standard open tread stair, cut it at 31.5. And then that gives you a finished rail height of 34.5 for the most part. I mean, run and rise will change it, but it gives you that average. And then on a curb or a box stringer, I cut it at 29.5 to start, which does the same thing. It gives you that, on average, the 34.5 inch rail height.
Yeah, that's on the stairs that you're building in your shop, right?
Correct. Or, you know, basically any stair you can use it on, but that's why it basically gives you a ½ inch over code minimum.
Huh. That's pretty cool.
But you know, for the run and rise, yeah, your rail height would vary, you know, minimal amount because of the angle of the stair changes. But for the most part, you're always above code. Then you know, if you're holding to the bottom of the rail, it's going to give you, when you cut your rail to the angle at the top, to mark your null for your rail to intersect.
You don't use too many different size handrails, I take it then.
Well, yeah, for the most part. I mean, that was good with 60-10, 62-10, 67-10, 69-10.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of variation in the overall height.
Yeah, 2 1/4 inch rail, 2 3/8.
Right. Yeah, for that it works. If you start getting with the newer stuff, to the top of it's still the same. You just have to be careful with the T-rail, that new thin stuff, which I've never installed it personally myself. It's came out since I used to install.
What's it called?
It looks like a T. It's I'm trying to think. There's a number for it. I think it's Oak Point, which actually, if you can see my screen.
How do I do that, Tara?
You should just be able to, like, I can see it because I'm like seeing the
I can
video
see
of
it.
them.
Yeah. I can
Oh,
see
you're
it
talking about
too.
the little pictures on the side. See, my little pictures
Yeah.
are gone now. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on here now, because now I didn't mess myself up. Oh, yeah. Okay, now. Oh, yeah. That thing won't pass any code. Does
We
it?
install a lot of it.
I didn't ask you that. That's too
I
wide.
think there's a way it squeaks by, but barely.
Just barely. Okay. 'Cause
Yeah.
From the looks, that just didn't. Okay, now I saw that. All right. The other thing I wanted to quickly just touch on is when we started this, there was just 3 or 4 of us sitting around a table. Dave Cooper was one of them, Boston Dave, and Rusty and myself, and I don't know if you guys remember the young lady from the glue company. Rusty, who am I trying to say?
Patty.
Yeah. So, Patty. And we kind of started a business plan in our heads. We did a little conversation, and Dave added more all on through the next couple of days, and we talked and talked and talked. Then we never did anything more with it. And part of the conversation was, what were our goals for the Stair School? Who would we try to reach, and how would we try to reach them, and yada yada yada. So I thought we would start in the next couple of meetings, and on the side a little bit here, if you guys would take a look at the education page and kind of think of business plan. Who would we try to attract as students? And then as students, who is their beneficiary? So if a stair company is hiring a new student or hiring a new employee, or is taking an employee out of a shop to become a staller, is one venue. Then there's who else we can reach. At one point, we talked about doing trade schools, offering a program to the trade schools for architectural students, engineering students, and even carpenter classes. A lot of the trade schools have carpentry classes. So if you guys would think about this and kind of take a look at this Academy website and kind of determine what's missing. See if you can look at it from a point of view of what you would need or what you think your company would need, and give it a shot like that, and try to see if we can come up with something to put together a simple business plan. We're going to try to keep the business plan under 1,000 pages. So if we filled up 2, I'd be tickled. But I don't think we're going to get to 2, because they're just going to be like bullet points. And then from there, it'll expound as we grow. But we're trying to figure out how to reach. Like right now, we've got National Wood Flooring Association is very excited about the program. Thank you, COVID-19 and all that garbage. So that class has been postponed to one of these 4 months. I don't know if we've nailed it down. Have we nailed it down yet, Tara?
We have not, no.
Okay, and then of course the New York class has been postponed. It's possible that's going to postpone into next year. Don't know exactly what the determination on that's going to be just yet. So we're trying to get done with 2 classes this year, but we got to try to think about who else we can reach with this class, because you don't have to be hands-on. You got sales reps. We've had a couple of sales reps come through the school. Though they would never pick up a tool or look at one, they would sit and do the math, and one of them even passed the level 1 code courses with his level 1 on the school. So I think there was 2 of them that did that. I think one gentleman from LJ Smith did that too. So there's a way to reach some of these people, and we want to make sure we figure it out. So if you guys would give this a couple minutes of thought, we want to keep this going right here until we understand 100% of what we're working on. Well, I just touched on these 2 about moving. Rusty's working on the iron section still. I'm not pushing him on that, being that we got some time now. It's killing us. Rusty, you got a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I do want some input on the iron. There's so many different ways of installing the iron. I've been looking at the different things online. LJ's got a way they do it. House of Forgings has a lot of stuff out there. And since, I want to try to follow that, I guess one question I've got is, David, how do you all typically install it? Your basic iron baluster? Because we do it multiple ways personally. We might do it, if there's solid baluster, we'll drill a 9/16 hole for 1/2 inch baluster, drive it down into the floor, then set the rail over it. Sometimes our applications, we drill deeper holes and we come up into it, especially in the landing application, and then actually use 1/4 inch wedges around it, or little small wooden wedges, glue them in. Some applications that works really good, especially if it's like a radius staircase where we can put extra blocking under it. But I'm just wondering, there's so many different variations. and the manufacturers really don't show a really good way of installing these, especially the metal newels. Some manufacturers don't even sell the steel newels.
Yeah, the metal newels, I've only had a couple instances where we've used them, and there's few and far between, and they were on a circular stair. Usually epoxy, drill them hole, the hole bigger, and then epoxy them in. The same way with the balusters. Do you all use the shoes on the floor or the treads to cover the holes?
Sometimes. Recently, we had to cut them out square without shoes.
Yeah. Around here, for the most part, I think everything's getting the shoe to cover the
Right.
hole. And we'll drill a 5/8 hole. We'll use a 2-part epoxy. Usually drill the hole at a minimum of a 1/2 inch deep. Glue them in, let the shoe cover. And then on the bottoms of the level or the rake rail, same thing. Drill the hole a little deep. For the most part, use the epoxy, glue all the holes, flip in the rail over and install it on top of the balusters. And just tap everything down with a rubber mallet, being that the hole is snug and it holds everything pretty tight.
Do you drill the baluster to drop a trim screw and set a trim screw in there, in the back of the baluster?
Not on the field installed. We've been doing some pre-assembled stuff here that we've shipped out on plate that we've screwed in place to keep it from, for transportation, keep it from pulling apart.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you fasten your rail to your newels, your wooden newels, and then the rail, the epoxy sets up 20, 30 minutes. It's set up hard. About the only way it comes off is it'll pull a finish right off the balusters.
Yeah, or pull fiber.
LJ is the only manufacturer that shows putting a screw every 6th baluster, which personally I think is a good idea, so that it can never pull up, just through the bottom of the baluster into the handrail, and also at the bottom where it's going into the tread under the shoe.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen people, trim carpenters, not use a 2-part epoxy, but use just a liquid nail, and next thing you know, somebody's pulled the rail off the baluster.
Yeah, I've had a lot of trouble with there. 2 things. One is if the epoxy, they use the thinner epoxy. We've had problem of it on the tops where it'll run down over the balusters where they've had it runny. It's just, I guess, different brands of epoxy. It gets thinner.
Right.
And then now you got epoxy all down your balusters, which the only way to fix that is to replace them.
Ouch.
Yeah. And then there was, hold on, I actually have a picture of it here. It's a urethane. It's not construction adhesive. It's a urethane glue in a small caulk tube type that when we were in Kentucky, they used, which it's a Loctite PL Pro Line Premium. It's a construction adhesive, but it's it sets up harder than just your regular sub-4 adhesive.
Yeah, sub-4 adhesive has got some elasticity to it.
Yeah, this sets up a lot harder to where you don't have the issue of the baluster still never really getting tight. So it works a little better. But for the most part, the epoxy we've had the best luck out of, because 30 minutes after you start, it's done.
Take your pencil and paper and write this down. Go to Jamestown Distributors. They're a boat manufacturer. They're right in Rhode Island. You're looking for a product called THIXO. It's a 2-part epoxy. They sell it in different quantities. They sell it in single caulking tube cartridges that takes a regular standard caulking gun. or they sell it with 2 tubes that mix. You get an internal mixed nozzle you put on the end of it. That product will not sag on your balusters. If you make a little bit of a mess, if the guy misses hitting the hole, take a little denatured alcohol when it's wet and just wipe it off, and it leaves no residue. Once that rail if you drill up in there 3/4 of an inch into your rail and set it with those epoxy, you're not going to get that rail off. You'll split it off. We've had very good luck with it. We've used it for a long time.
Do you guys put a scratch mark around the top of the iron before you stick it in so the epoxy can crowd around the iron so it doesn't slide out?
Well, the best thing you do is take coarse piece sandpaper so you create a little bit of a bond.
Yeah, this is a little deeper than a sandpaper. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
How about the
Yep.
newel? How about an iron newel? How do you guys get around that thing?
Well, if we use an iron newel, which we don't a lot, but if we do, it's usually on a starting step that's curved or something, and we would bore it right down through, have the starting step be solid, bore it down through and set it with epoxy.
You don't ever bottom drill your newels or your balusters and use dowel screws? Use hanger bolts?
Hanger bolts on, not typically. You know, we usually would prefer like a starting step, boring it right down through. We make the starting step solid block where it is, and bore it all the way down through.
Yeah, that for us, that's the strongest way. We've done the bolts on the bottom when it was up on the balconies, and actually epoxied it all to a plate that we had welded to it. But you still have to wonder if it ever breakage, what kind of liability you're facing, because that's not an approved standard. And you have to wonder about that. But see, when you get up into your floor trusses, that's where your steel newels there's just not a way to set them without drilling into a truss.
Well, what we've done in that situation, Rusty, we did a job, big curve there that went up around. The only newel in the bottom was at the very bottom. And what we did to get structural integrity was we actually went in and epoxied in a steel plate that we knew where before we put the landing nosing in, because we had it all orientated exactly where it went, and we had it drilled and tapped, and then had the bolt on the bottom to be able to thread it down that way, and it worked very well. But that was going into steel. So, you know, there's different scenarios. You have to do different things depending on the particular predicament you're in.
Right. No, I agree. And we've done the same thing, but my concern was you're working with a Chinese newel that's not, once you bore it and tap it, you don't know how much strength there really is in the newel itself. And that was always my concern. And so, you know, I try to stay away from them anytime I can, but I guess, you know, my thought process is one of these students are going to ask, well, how do you mount a newel up there? There's really not a good way of mounting it with the manufacturer's parts and pieces. And we're trying to keep the school based around what the manufacturers offer to keep us out of any liability like that. But I mean, there are many ways, you know, and I don't mind sharing the different ways with people, but it still goes back on them, and it's still just not a good way.
Well, unfortunately, the bottom line with this whole thing is everybody works differently. Everybody works around what they have for equipment and the particular job. So you can't write anything that's going to work universally for everything.
That's why we can only teach the theory.
Yeah. They still have to be able to think their way through and do something practical. Did you have luck, Dave, finding that link, the epoxy?
I did, and I put it in the minutes too.
Yeah.
there's a bunch of tubes on there, but I just went to Jamestown
Right.
Distributors and typed in what you said, and there's options. So I just linked it on the meeting minutes.
You know, one of the tubes, you're only going to use a half a tube on a typical installation. And if you just leave the cartridge on the end that where it mixes internally in the nozzle, you can just, when you're ready to go again, just unscrew that, put a new nozzle on it, and you're good to go because it hardens up in the tube and it's still good. So,
Yeah, what we have is it's similar to what you're saying. It's a smaller 3M and Loctite both have a version. It's the same thing. It's a double-sided tube that goes in a little gun that you buy. It has internally mixing straws. You can buy those in bulk. Same thing. You just, it's like a small caulk gun. You just squeeze it out. It pre-mixes it. You have a long, like 5-inch straw to where you can get it up in the holes well. And it's the same thing. If you had the denatured alcohol, you can clean it up a little bit. I want to say it was Hisnol was the name of the epoxy that was on the tubes that we use.
I've used that stuff to fix CNC vacuum tables.
Okay. I mean, once it's set, it's done.
Yeah. Set, dry, and then put the bit back in and clean out the vacuum track. Yep, I got you. I know what that is.
so the other thing I need to bring is I have these in my hand. We have a new SMA member. I talked to him. He's in somewhere in the Carolinas. Tara would probably know who he is. He manufactures these two-part epoxies in the small containers that take the little gun, and I think they make them bigger. He sent me some samples. I haven't tried them and put them through the test yet. But he is a member that manufactures this two-part epoxy. So you might talk to him and get a little bit more input from him.
Was that McFeely's? Tim Grove?
Probably. It was the guy that one of them I called about that was on the list when we were looking to see who was or wasn't going to the conference.
Okay,
Let's
I'll
go
take
back
a
to
look at
Brandon.
it. I don't know who that. I don't think Tim was on your list. I think that might be Mark, who's a distributor.
Yeah,
Does that sound right?
probably. That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. I'll make myself a note to look and see who that is.
Yeah, I'm on the Jamestown website, and they've got the 2-to-1 epoxy set up, which is real similar to the same look of what I was discussing. Yeah, the 3M it's a different gun. It looks to be the exact same thing. It's just the prices. I don't know off the top of my head which one, cost wise.
What we use is the one that is a double cartridge system. It's a 450 milliliter, and you buy the gun. It's called the Pro. And like I say, the thickness of it is perfect for. The thickness is about like peanut butter, so it doesn't sag when you're putting your rail on. You don't have it running down and making a mess. That's what makes it ideal. We found that once that stuff bonds, when you're talking about pinning a rail, you won't get a rail off. You would have to split it off because that stuff literally, is strong. So, and yes, it seems expensive. It's like, almost $30 a tube. But again, you can get a couple of stair systems. So if $15 a job does your epoxying, that's not unrealistic.
Yeah.
Most jobs. So
that's like the brands that we were using. We found out that you use the 20-minute set time. It has that same, like you said, peanut butter consistency. We tried to go to the 5-minute, and that's where we ran into the watery issue. It's way thinner when it mixes, and that's what caused it to run. So we just stuck with the 20-minute, and like you said, it's more of a gel, and you don't have the running issue.
Yeah.
What color is it?
Clear.
Clear.
Yeah.
Stuff I was using was black. The ISO, whatever, was black, unless they put I just happened to buy a black tube that's a colored tube.
You can get some of it in different shades, from off-white to almost clear black. And then there was, because I was just on McMaster Car sells a lot of it that you can get, and it's different. Some of it you got to watch. It's for either electronics, even for glass. To adhere to glass, you start getting into your different colors.
That Total Boat product has one that dries to a wood colored finish. So there are options.
Cool. You got all that, Rusty?
Yep.
Okay.
Is it PC Epoxy still a member? I was trying to look at it.
They are, yes.
So what we need to do on epoxy, we just need to show some various types and leave it up to the installer as to which type they want. Just to show, well, like everything else, you got multiple choices. So, you know, we definitely want to highlight our members. So we might want to get some epoxy from the 2 different members
Sure.
for that class. Along with, like when we have a House of Forging, they've got their own epoxy.
That's
But just
fine.
like everything else, you know, we want to show the different types. Which we use different types ourselves. We use a marine epoxy when we really need a high strength. When we're not looking for the high strength, we use what the vendors sell with the balusters. It's still 2-part, but it's still, it's just different. PC Epoxy did sell a black one, and we used that on a couple of black jobs, and we just seemed to like that better. I don't know, or the guys putting it in did. You know, I wasn't putting it in, so I didn't know, but that's what they had said. So anyway, I do appreciate y'all's input, and as I put these together, you know, we can talk further about, you know, the different styles and different things. But for the most part, I'm trying to get all the information through the vendors as far as how to put it in. But like I say, they really don't show a lot of detail on it. The pictures are pretty vague. So anyway, I guess that's all I've got on the iron section.
Well, look at that. Is it backwards? It's backwards, isn't it?
No,
No,
I was messing with that. That's a 1/2-inch steel baluster on a 10-inch run. You turn the baluster on a 45-degree. That's just enough to make it clear. So, Rusty, I don't know if you want to put that in there or not, because we don't mention that by turning the 1/2-inch baluster on a 45.
I don't know what that means. I guess you'll have to.
You rotate it. You rotate it 45 degrees. So the baluster is wider than 1/2 inch.
you've got the points, and instead of being the
0.7.
square face to the rise, you've
Yeah.
135 degreed it, so your points are to the risers
Right.
instead of the square edge. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I would pull a Dave Cooper on that. I'd measure it.
I just did. Calculator. I'm a math guy. Thank God for smartphones.
And there will be a tape measure cut off at 31.
31 and a half.
31 and a half inches in these workstations, I guarantee you.
Use yardsticks, Rusty.
Well, I like the tape measure. I mean, I don't know, maybe yardstick's easier, but I think personally, I would like to show them the numbers,
Yeah.
you know, the calculations, and get them to understand why, and then show them the shortcut of a tape measure. And then it will all settle. I love that idea.
Yeah, we use the wooden yardsticks to have the numbers, measurements on them. Whatever you want to do, that sounds good. Tara, you want to give number 5 just a half a moment?
Sure. So Rusty is currently working with a couple of teams on 2 AIA classes. So these are the Architectural Institute Academy that we're trying to have the continuing education service. So they're called learning units through them. And so what this allows the SMA to do is present classes. Our members can present classes to architects, and then architects get credit that they need to maintain their AIA membership. And Andy has had great luck with this. So it's definitely something that we think is a value. And the first one that Rusty's working on is Code Conundrums. And that team, hopefully, if they all agree, will be Dave Cooper from SMA Dave Cooper, who's getting ready to do a Code Bloopers and Blunders Lunch and Learn next week on Wednesday. And then in a month following, Dylan Shetler and Roy Hofstetter are going to be doing a code design tension. Like, how do you look at a design and then also the code and come up with something that's aesthetically pleasing? And so combining those two into Code Conundrums will be a good class for architects. And the second one that we're working on, Rusty is working with Doug Adams, and then hopefully Dylan Shetler on that one as well. And anybody else that wants to join the AIA SMA team, Robert, I'm sure you'll be part of that. But just talking about the AWI, the SMA 0643, and what that means to architects and how they should use it. And so with that becoming an ANSI standard, hopefully by the end of this year, it's important that we get ahead of it and just be prepared to have a class to help those architects that are going to be using those documents. So those are two things that Rusty's working on with the team to just make sure that we have good course offerings for our architects that are interested in learning about stairs.
You guys are familiar with the AWI documents that we're putting together right now, right? Bob?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, kids, anything else? Take a look at this right here. This is going to catch us up, keep us moving forward. Come up with some, think about how you can attract, how we can attract even different people from different, I don't want to say walks of life, but different backgrounds that would benefit from this, whether it be book learn students or actually physical on-the-job students. Because we're going to spend a little time on this here coming up here very shortly, as soon as we finish the rewrite for the balustrade class. So please do the poll. Let me have that by Monday of this past week. No, let me have that here by next couple of days, if you would, please, so we can. Please check everything. Make sure the math is correct. Make sure, because I got people helping put this together that they have a hard time spelling stairs, so to speak. They don't have a visual of a stair. And look for another poll, the second of 3 sets to come out here, probably next week after next. So that, and that'll be mostly Bob's stuff, a little bit of Andy's stuff, some of Chaz's work, and then the last, of course, will be Rusty's that'll come out. And if anybody wants to lend a hand on anything, that's just great to help Rusty with the iron and the horizontal wood infill that we talked about last time. If anybody wants to help me with that, that's good. Otherwise, I'm going to start teaching mortise and tenon. That's all I understand. Anything else, kids? Tara, you got anything else?
Yes, I'm typing up action items. This is something that we've done for the board that has been really helpful, just so that we know what, leaving this meeting, the things that we need to take a look at as a committee. And so I just want to make sure that I have them correctly. So the first one was provide feedback on the new template slides, completing that poll, and you asked that to be done by the 15th. Is that correct?
Yeah, the end of the week. or next Monday will be fine.
Monday? Okay. And
Okay.
then if anybody can help with wood infill, to contact you. Anybody that can help with iron, to contact Rusty.
Yes.
And then to just put special consideration behind the business plan, and that's what we're going to start working on.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Hey, guys, anything else? You guys got questions? Anything else you want to talk about? All right, then. Let's go have another cup of coffee. Woohoo!
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
See you, kids. Enjoy your day.